This week we're getting a brand new Cloverfield movie, a surprise sequel to the hit 2008 monster film that few people saw coming. We figured this was as good an excuse as any to look back at other famous kaiju films that never got to see the light of day, like the first American Godzilla movie. No, not that one, the one that actually wouldn't have sucked enormous Godzilla-sized balls. Hey guys, welcome to Rejected Movie Ideas, where we try to make amends with some of the horrible movies we were forced to watch as children by digging up the remains of their much better unproduced original scripts. Such is the case of a 1994 would-be monster slapfest simply titled Godzilla vs. the Gryphon. In the early 90s, Sony Pictures made a deal with the Japanese production company who owned Godzilla to reboot their franchise for an American audience. Initially hesitant to negotiate with Americans over anything related to atomic-powered weapons, the Japanese eventually decided to license off one of their biggest pop cultural icons in return for buckets full of cash, with the condition that Sony Pictures wouldn't make any dramatic changes to the look and feel of their beloved city-stomping monster. With that in mind, writing duo Terry Rossio and Ted Elliott were tasked with adapting the 40-year-old icon of destruction for the American screen, which they did by taking the most beloved elements of the original Japanese films, namely badass kaiju fights, and replacing all the Asian characters with white people. Godzilla vs. the Gryphon follows the Moby Dick approach of storytelling, where a widowed American scientist named Jill obsessively spends 12 years of her life tracking down the monster who killed her husband while he was in an offshore scientific expedition portrayed in the movie's opening scene. Her quest is finally over when Godzilla makes a surprise appearance in San Francisco, scaring the hell out of every single tourist on the Golden Gate Bridge and triggering the American military to face the beast for the first time. And while charging a 50,000-ton creature of death with a tank doesn't sound like the best idea on paper, Jill is able to use her science powers to sedate and capture the monster, who is quickly airlifted to a secret government base in Massachusetts. However, the victory is short-lived, since Jill soon discovers that the reason Godzilla was approaching mainland America for the first time was to fight off an alien invader who had crash-landed smack dab in the middle of Kentucky. Described as a colossal monster with leathery blood-red wings like a bat, the body of a mountain lion, and snakes instead of a tongue, this Gryphon is also armed with a penchant for theatrical flair, which pushes the monster out of the Bible Belt and into the Big Apple. It's at this time that Godzilla awakens from this secret military base and races towards New York for the final showdown between monster and even bigger monster. A 20-minute long fight between two mid-90s CGI characters ensues, only ending when Godzilla defeats his alien opponent and celebrates by tearing his head off and breathing a stream of fire into his mutilated body. Fearing the monster would now turn its rage against everyone else in the city, the army again tries to shoot down the already weakened Godzilla, until Jill convinces them to leave him alone, since he basically just saved the entire East Coast from being destroyed by that alien bat mountain lion thing. Jill has now forgiven the monster for killing her husband and is no longer seeking to destroy him, leaving the door open for Sony Pictures to have Godzilla return for as many sequels as they'd like. Only problem with this was that Sony wasn't sure if they would want any sequels to Godzilla vs. the Gryphon at all. Apparently, the creative team behind the movie, led by director Jean Debon, had done such a good job preserving the look and feel of the original Japanese Godzilla during pre-production that the suits at Sony worried the monster wouldn't work with American audiences. Instead, they were pushing Debon and his team to steer more in the direction of 1993's hit dino flick Jurassic Park as a source of inspiration, instead of the original Toho films from Japan. This didn't go over well with Debon, who was fresh off the success of cinema's most critically acclaimed exploding bus film, Speed, and didn't want to compromise on how he felt the Japanese monster should be adapted for an American version. Luckily for Sony Pictures, the studio quickly found a director who had no problem destroying a country's treasured icons in the form of Independence Day director Roland Emmerich. With Debon out of the way, Emmerich and the studio had free reign to make a Godzilla movie that aimed more at one-upping Jurassic Park than creating something that would honor the spirit of the Japanese kaiju genre. Surprising to absolutely no one, Roland Emmerich's Americanized Godzilla opened in 1998 to an underwhelming box office and abysmal reviews from both critics and fans of the original monster. This prompted Sony to cancel any sequel plans they had for the franchise and left Toho unwilling to trust an American company with handling their beloved icon for the next 16 years. As for Jean Debon, he quickly moved on to more personal projects like Speed 2 Cruise Control, where he wouldn't have to compromise his artistic vision in order to please a studio, or its stars, or an audience, or anybody, really. Who wore it better, Matthew Broderick or Bryan Cranston? And are you excited for a sequel to the Bryan Cranston version? Let us know in the comments below and subscribe to the channel for weekly rejected movie ideas. And if you like me, go ahead and find me on the internet on Twitter at James A. Janice and on YouTube at Practical Folks. Thanks a lot, guys. Be good people.